I'd like to start with inviting each of our candidates to take a couple minutes and introduce themselves and say whatever they want. And I have a few questions, and then if you have some questions, Mike, take it away.
Sure. Well, hi. Thanks for coming out, everyone. My name is Micah Safeston.
Why don't you stand? Okay.
Sure. There. My name is Micah Safeston. That's Safeston, like saves $10. I'm running for Cache County Clerk Auditor. I'm running for a few different reasons, and primarily what I see as the primary role of I'll start with the auditor, is that of providing financial oversight for your tax dollars. How are your tax dollars being spent here at the county? The auditor is supposed to be the expert in that. The auditor needs to be a resource for the people and a resource for the county council and for the rest of the county officers in how the county can improve, how it can become more efficient, and how it's treating your fund, the money you pay in taxes, how it's treating that responsibly. So the other half is county clerk, and to a large degree, it's very similar to the auditor. Your votes are sacred in the same way that your tax dollars are. It's important that the process by which your votes are being counted is transparent, and that you know that not only are your votes being counted accurately, that your neighbors are as well. So it's really a key of the key is to balance the importance of obviously voter privacy with transparency. And that's really that's going to be kind of my guiding principle as clerk. And really that transparency extends to all the duties of the county clerk. And fundamentally, the clerk is the clerk of the council. And you need to know that what the governing body for this county, what it's doing, and it needs to be served by the clerk. And so a little bit about me, I currently work for the Cache County Council. I'm the sole staffer for the county council right now. And so I do everything for them, anything that they need, whether it's writing ordinances and policies, whether it's helping them in their duty as much like the auditor, they also have oversight over county funds, and I help them with that as well. So I'm already getting a taste of that in my current role. Cache County is not where I grew up, but it's where I've lived my entire adult life. Basically ever since I got home from my LDS mission in 2014, I've lived here. I've spent 4 years working in local government, 3.5 years working for the city of Logan, and then the rest of that time working here in Cache County. I graduated from USU, and I've also worked in Congress and at the Utah legislature. So I've seen competent and incompetent management of public funds, and I'll let you guess which one of those other two places I saw the competency and which one I didn't. But this county is my home, and I love it. I spent my childhood moving all over the country, and to have a place that I can call home has been something that I honestly wasn't sure I didn't know what this felt like growing up, and now I do, and it's just such an honor and a privilege to just have a chance to run for this position, to serve my neighbors. So I think I look forward to answering Jeff's and all of your questions.
Holding a mic. Hey everybody, my name is Bryson Bem. I am the current, acting clerk auditor. Before that, I was the chief deputy clerk auditor here at the county. I've been here since 2020, and I'm from here. So, I went to school just down the street over here at Ellis. I forgot where my directions are. Went to Mount Logan, went to Logan High, went to Utah State. I'm really excited that I've had the opportunity to run for this office. I've always wanted to serve, and I feel this is the best capacity for me to do that. Just like Micah, the government needs to be transparent and also needs to be accountable to the citizens. There's a lot of government figures out there that feel like they can spew whatever they want and then not expect any backlash. But, government's not supposed to be that. Government's for the people. You're supposed to come to us. We're supposed to answer and not hide anything. And that's kind of my main platform is you got to be transparent, you got to be accountable, and then you also got to be efficient. And then I've seen that, within all the aspects of this office, from the clerk's office, from elections. Transparency and accountability is the two biggest things that we have. And efficient. If you take too long to get those votes counted, that's when everyone starts freaking out. We got to hurry and make sure the process is clean and crisp and know that every I and every T is checked. With the auditor side, the same thing. We've conducted more audits than ever before, and we found some great findings. Just recently, we found out we own the Bear River Health Department building. Did anyone know that? But, it was a big shock. I was there helping with the audit, and it was kind of like the aha moment of like, guess what we just found out? We have this real estate holding that we've had since the 90s, and no one really had a clue about it or kind of put it on the back burner that we forgot. Also with the auditor's office, we're in charge of tax relief, for disabled veterans and for our senior citizens. Our disabled veterans gave us the greatest sacrifice, and the best we can do is, make sure they don't have to pay property taxes or very little. And, same thing with senior citizens. They lived in their homes for almost their entire lives. And, with the market rates, they price them out. So we have to have some help with them as well. With the clerk's office, we digitized thousands of records when I'm here at the office. We've gone through every single marriage license since the beginning of incorporation. So if any of you guys have ancestors here, you can find your marriage license. Actually, one of our staff members found out that her husband's great-grandfather, correct me if I'm wrong, was a sealer to one of the marriage licenses we just found out. And it was, a kind of cool family history project. We have now digitized all of our ordinances and resolutions. So if you want to look those up, you can give it to you in a digital copy instead of come on back to our vault to look at the old books. And also speaking of old books, we have archived them. We have them in our vault in a nice pretty bookcase for the entire public to see and enjoy. Because those are our founding documents and we've got to protect those. And that's one of the main things that I'm gonna make sure and preserve. Even so much so that we have a brand new storage warehouse. It's also where we process our elections. And before that, the chain of custody of elections where it's all over the place. The election was getting conducted in 4 different rooms instead of 1. So it was really hard to track, exactly what ballot is in the same process. Now the ballot doesn't leave anyone's sight or even the room. It's all under lock and key 4 times. We have a building, we have a cage, and we have a safe. And that's the most important thing here for the clerk auditor, like I mentioned before, is transparency, accountability, and efficiency. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is David Benson, and I'm running for the position of clerk auditor as well. My initial thought tonight is that I'm very grateful for the words that were mentioned in the invocation about the Constitution. Our U.S. Constitution came about a little after the Revolution. We had suffered through the Articles of Confederation and just wasn't strong enough to keep our country united. And so our founding fathers decided that they were going to do something new. And they held that constitutional convention. And that constitution that we ratified does at least 3 things. One is that it's designed to preserve our unalienable rights. Stand for the common defense. Those rights that we love and adore from the Declaration of Independence. The second thing it does is it was supposed to reduce the burden of government. Government is supposed to be small. The Constitution gave very specific guidelines about what our government was supposed to do, and nothing else. We're supposed to keep our taxes low and keep the control of our general population to a minimum so that we can enjoy our free lives. And lastly, the Constitution was designed to be effective. The Articles of Confederation weren't, the Constitution was. Now, in Cache County, we may not have the national platform, but those same principles apply. And if you go to my website, you'll see that these are the 3 of the principles that I'm advocating for. One is protection of unalienable rights. The other is reducing the burden of government, reducing bureaucracy, reducing taxation, not starting new government programs. And the last one is to be effective as we serve our citizens. Sometimes we can be efficient as well, which is great, but being effective, I think, is more important. Our founding fathers were wise enough to know that efficiency sometimes is not the best result, but whenever we can add value, that's good. So the role of Cache County Clerk and Auditor, those are actually two roles. And it's a lot of work. There's a lot of difficult things to be done. Not just being the chief election officer, but also kind of like the chief watchdog of the entire county. Where, as the clerk and auditor, especially as the auditor, I would be responsible for making sure that every department in the county was on budget and was following code and other procedures. I take that responsibility very seriously. I'm proud to be a part of this county. My wife and I originally, I actually spent a little bit of time here when I was a child, going to Adams Elementary School. But most of my life was spent, my childhood was spent in Virginia growing up. That's where I met my wife, that's where I got married. But for the last 20 years, we've spent our adult lives here in Cache County. We've raised 6 children here, we've seen them leave the house and go on and do their own things. We still have 1 son left. We're happy to have him here. But that's why I'm running. It's because I've got skin in the game. This is my home. This will be my home forever. This is where we'll be buried. And I'd like to help make sure that we keep it safe and secure. Now, emphasis is on help. Can't do it alone. Obviously, we need all the citizens to pitch in. There are plenty of other elected officials. But as the clerk and auditor, I feel like for a short time, I can make a tremendous impact and help establish best practices for the county. A couple quick highlights. I've got a degree in psychology, a master's degree in business. I have 2 certificates in information technology. So I know how things work in the private sector. I know how things work with technology. And I'm very comfortable in those arenas. For 30+ years, I've been working in private sector and also helping nonprofit organizations. Started off as a lowly private in the U.S. Army. I'm a veteran now. And most of my time has been spent helping companies improve their operations, improving relationships with their staff, improving their bottom line, and serving their customers as best I can. And that's what I want to do. I want to serve my customers as best I can, which is all of you. Not a politician. I hope that's okay with you. I don't plan on having a long career in politics. I just want to serve for a term or 2 and then let someone else take a turn. But before I go, I want to make sure that that person is set up for success to keep us for decades on. Thank you very much.
My question to you is, what has prepared you to be the county clerk and auditor?
I think what's prepared me the most is I've been working in this office for the last 3.5 years. I know exactly where everything is, to the last paperclip, staple, you name it, I know where it is. I know every single process, from issuing a marriage license, a business license, annexation, to voter registrations, handling and administrating the election, and helping with tax relief. I guess I have my fingers on all the pots in the office, because the clerk's office is kind of catch-all for the county, so licensing or form they want to throw out, they give it to us. So I have to be a jack of all trades. Before that, I would say my mission. I was a pretty shy guy before I left, and working in government, you can't. You gotta be working for the people, answering their questions, and that can help me get on my shell a lot. Not a little bit, but a lot. I got a degree in political science, and I have 2 minors in economics and sociology that helped me prepare and understand just the politics sphere in general. At that time, I've worked for campaigns, so I understand elections on that end, and I've held leadership positions within the College Republican Party when I was up in Utah State. So I of being a conservative on a campus, but we did a lot of events. We hosted state legislatures, kind of get the conservative to the younger people, because Democrat values are popular on face value, and they don't fully understand. And college campuses are kind of, I don't want to say a cesspool, but they're kind of, that's what they go to. It's easy to teach liberal policies because it's flashy and it sounds nice, but you got to get deep dive into things and realize the conservative views are the best way to govern and to live.
Well, I'll just touch on a few points on what's helped prepare me for this position. I'll just start off with my time in the service. The Army taught me a few things. One of them is that I could sleep anywhere. The other is I could eat anything. And that served me well, actually. But specific to this role, it's actually taught me that I can do what I thought at once was impossible. And we've had some challenges recently in our clerk and auditor position, and I think it's going to take someone who's got resolve and dedication to make sure that we can overcome some of those challenges. I remember all the way back to basic training, with drill sergeants telling us to do things that I said, I can't do that. How am I going to, I can't run uphill with a 50-pound rucksack on my back. But I did. Fortunately, I had a lot of friends to help me. And so part of that preparation, I think, was my military experience and training. Another thing is just my work in the private sector. For 6 years, I used my accounting formal education to travel across the country and help nonprofits with their accounting software installations. So that included not just advising them on which modules they might use for their different accounting needs, but also to install the software and then train their staff on how to use it. So I had quite a bit of extensive experience there. And it's not just with the accounting, it's with the individuals, because I dealt with such a variety of different people in different situations that it allowed me to understand how I can interact at everyone's level. The next thing I'll mention is that for 3 years, I was the managing director for Dale Carnegie Training for the entire state of Utah. Dale Carnegie wrote the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. In order to serve in that role, I actually had to spend a month in New York, living out of a hotel, learning everything that they had to teach. And I have to confess, that was an uncomfortable experience. I learned things about myself I didn't like. But it helped me become a better person with interpersonal relationships. And so from that time, for those 3 years, I helped organizations get better. I was teaching classes full of CEOs, middle line managers, all the way down to frontline workers. Everyone gets the same respect, everyone gets the same treatment, everyone's opinion is valued, even Mark Hurd. Last thing I'll mention is that I think what's prepared me is my 20 years living here in the county. Now, for most of those 20 years, I was working, I was raising children, like many of you have, volunteering, going to church and all that kind of stuff. But I found time to participate here and there in local government, which gave me the exposure to see how government works. I got to see things about the police commission, on the library board, on volunteering at our local schools. Even got to volunteer, I guess I was a temporary employee, I got to volunteer last November as a worker at the election. My wife and I love to volunteer. We actually volunteered many years ago when we used to vote in person, right there at the county building. You remember. That was fun. Anyway, all that volunteering experience taught me the values that we love here in Cache Valley. Also, as I mentioned, taught me how government works. And as you've seen on my website, the way government works isn't always the way it should work. The way we do things isn't necessarily the best way. Sometimes it is, but not always. And so I think my life experience of interacting with so many different people in so many different situations has prepared me to interact with every department in this county and to be a resource to them for improvement. Thanks.
Yeah, what's prepared me to serve as your clerk auditor? Well, I think there's kind of an obvious the obvious answer is, my current position working here at the county and seeing the challenges of the county firsthand. The county council is involved in almost every important decision. Indeed, the most important decisions are the ones they make. And I'm there for that. And I see the challenges facing our county, both as like the sense of the county government, but also the people of our county, and how the growth that seems inevitable is going to force us to make some changes. And they're not all of them are going to be changes we want to make. But we need to have someone who knows those challenges. And I've been able to be a part of that, working for the county council. And I have some other experiences working in government. I have, I mentioned spending some time in the legislature and also in Congress, and seeing how federal and state, how the budget is set at those levels, and frankly the kind of mess of a process it is at the federal level, and what I would say is kind of an exemplary process at the state level, and how that the way that the state auditor, for example, provides oversight, and being able to attend meetings with the state auditor and see the respect that he's afforded at the state level. When I decided to run for this position, I thought that's what I want. That's what I want for our county, is what the state of Utah has at the state level. I think some less obvious experience comes from my time working for the city of Logan, which was very different from what I do now. I was a water meter reader. I drove dump trucks. But that was where I first had an appreciation for serving my town. And I still drive around Logan, and I remember some project that I worked on years ago when I worked for the city of Logan. And state and federal government, they don't really get that. The things that they provide are often very abstract. The military isn't abstract, but the military is doing things overseas, most of the time. And but the rest of what they do is pretty abstract. But here, it's not the way it is at the local level. It's you see it. Our roads, our police officers, we need these things. But what we really need are responsible, honest people who can manage those things. We have wonderful people, wonderful law enforcement officers here. Now, the process of funding the law enforcement, funding the fire, sometimes that isn't as honorable, but it's just as important. And we need someone that's providing that oversight and being a resource to the council and to the executive on how we can spend that money wisely. So, thank you.
If you're elected, what will you do differently than what is happening now? It'll start with you.
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is something that's not different. I'm going to build on the good work that we've done in the past. And it doesn't matter how bad something may have been in the past, there's still honest people who've put in good work and have established some good processes. And I don't see a need to start from scratch. Our outgoing clerk did a tremendous work at doing some recordings. Bryson, you mentioned that, some of the successes that you've had in the office. And I think that's wonderful, and we should continue that. I think there's a little bit of tweaking that we can do. I'm not a huge fan of the website, but that's because I come from a background where we can increase that usability on the website. I used to teach senior citizens how to navigate the web. That was a fun experience. I'm learning patience. I still need practice. But making these services accessible to everyone is a very important job. And again, I think that our previous administrator did a worthy effort there and made some good progress. I think we can do a little bit better there. So that's one thing. I'll take my technology expertise and probably just take it to the next level. And whoever comes after me will probably take it to the next level as well. And that's the way it should be. One thing I'm certain that I'm going to do better, or do differently at least, is in the role of auditor. Now I know that when people think of clerk auditor, we tend to go right to the elections. Everyone wants to know about elections. That's super important. Auditor is also an important position. And it's something I think in the past has been a little overlooked. So from this point forward, what I'd like to do is have a regular and rigorous interaction with every single department in the county. And this is how it will look like. Starting the first week, after I meet with my own staff, see how everyone's doing there. I will start going out and interacting with every single other department in the county. Not just the council, not just the executive, but parks and recreation, vegetation control, all the different areas that we have. And I'll present myself as a resource to help them get better. I'm not there to be critical necessarily, but I'm there to help. And I want to add value to their operations. I want them to be able to call on me and say, hey, we're struggling in this area of our budget. Do you have any ideas on how we could get better? Because we want to stay in budget. Or, you know, we've got this dispute in our department about, is this how we're supposed to be following the law or following the policy? What do you think? And within the constraints and the confines of my office, not overstepping, be that resource. The other thing I want to do differently is I want to celebrate our successes. When a department's doing well, everyone should know about it, because that's encouraging and builds confidence for everyone in the county. And that's the way it should be. And when there are problems, as much as possible, I'd like to take care of those in-house. There's no need to go to the newspaper and announce something if we can solve a tiny problem, just the two of us. And if that's possible, then that's great. And I would take that as a success as well. So those are a couple of ways that I think I'd do things different.
Well, there's a few different things I had in mind, but I'm going to limit to just 3 things. First, key performance indicators. This is something that a lot of local governments, but also a lot of businesses use to track progress. We actually do have key performance indicators here at the county, but they're not really used for anything outside of setting next year's budget. I would expand that and use them, and I would make them as part of audits, our regular performance audits and any other kinds of audits that we run on any department. And I would do that by sitting down with each department head and each elected officer and say, what does success look like in your office? And let's make it measurable. Let's make it achievable. Let's find something that you and I, that is the elected officer, or department head and I, what can we agree on that is success? And then when we are running audits on that department, we can measure their performance against what we already established was success. So that's the first thing. Second thing, related to transparency. I would like to make grandma requests, all grandma requests that are sent to the clerk auditor's office, public to everyone. So if you send the clerk auditor's office a grandma request, it will be public. Anyone will be able to see it. That is the intent of grandma, is that it is access to information that is already public, but may be hard to find because it's in a mountain of data, but it's also, sitting on a computer that is also intermingled with private information. And what my office would do would be to, obviously, under the law, release only the information that is supposed to be public. But we wouldn't just send it to the requester. It would go up on the county website for anyone to see. That's the second thing. The third thing is also related to transparency. And that's related to the regular financial examinations of county funds. The auditor is required by county code to be examining all the books of the county every month. I would make sure that examination is public. You would be able to see it. You'd be able to see where your money is going. You can, to an extent, now see that. You can look at expense reports. You can look at the state transparency website the county sends that information to. But it would be a priority in my office that we're not just putting the information out there. We're going to put it out there on the website in a way that is digestible. You can read it and understand it. You don't need an accounting degree to know where your tax dollars are going. And under my office, you won't need an accounting degree to know that. I don't have an accounting degree, so I'll need some help from some accountants. And we have that, and we'll make that happen. But that's my third and final priority, or I guess, thing that I definitely want to change about that office.
Alrighty, the changes that I would like to make at the office, I guess I'll go by each, department within our office. So we're in charge of tax administration. Tax administration, there's so much paper. With this tax administration, we send out value notices. So every time you get that notice of your property, that's us. We send it to you. I want to make that also digital. And I feel like we live in email world, and I feel like you should get your your property notices by email if you'd like. You can opt into that. I want an online form for disabled veterans tax relief. Sometimes it's really tough for them to come into the office and fill out that form. We gotta make that available for them. Same thing with senior citizens. I want to make that form online if it's easier for them. There's so many times they've come in and they come out and they come in because we always need more information. And I want that to be like a one-stop shop so they know exactly what they need. In the clerk's office, I want to digitize more records. I want to make things more public. Right now, all the ordinances and resolutions they're digitized, but no one can see them. I want to post that onto that website and make that visible for everybody. I want to make marriage licensing more accessible. We have an online application right now. Maybe we look at and see go full online, or just like small tweaks there, because it's never going to be stagnant. You always got to find even the small changes. With elections, I want more voting in-person voting locations. Currently, we only do one. I want that to be at least 3. I want one in the north end. I want one here in Logan, and I want one down south. If people want to vote in person, they should have easier access to do that. I want to be more transparent as possible. There's state code that we have to follow, and there's certain things I'm not allowed to post, but I want to make everything as open as possible. With the auditor's office, I want to conduct even more audits. It's June, and we've conducted about 5 already. Before that, I would say 2019 or 1. I want to continue. We have an amazing auditor. She's a certified fraud examiner. And let me tell you, she finds everything. I want to examine all the expense reports. I want to make it easier for you to understand, just like Micah mentioned. If you don't know what account numbers are, then we want to know, it's like, oh, the clerk's office spent $30 on staples, or the assessor's office spent $400 on lunch. Like, why did they do that? The public should know. I think there's a misconception about what the auditor's office does. The auditor's office audits. We don't do the entire budget. We don't create the budget for the entire county. We audit the budget and the expenses, but we're not the ones who are saying. I want to make sure that I am open to the entire citizens. I don't want to be hiding behind the office and acting like, oh, he just got elected. And I'm just hiding. I don't want to answer. Let's collect a paycheck. I want to work. I want to be working full time. The previous clerk auditor was working part time. I'll be working full, even overtime if I have to. And more transparency. Transparent government is a good government.
All right, guys, here's a question that I have about the future. How will you improve the relationship with the county council?
This is an important question. I can promise that if I'm elected clerk auditor, that there will be a strong relationship with the county council and the clerk auditor's office on day 1. I currently work with every member of the county council almost every single day now. They've put an enormous amount of trust in me, something I'm honored to have, frankly. And the idea of compromising that trust is honestly terrifying to me, and it wouldn't be. And so I am extremely confident that relationship would be stronger than ever if I were made clerk auditor.
I guess some of you may know the clerk auditor's office kind of can be a little tense with the county council. I think the biggest thing is communication, the open communication. A lot of things have gone on that from maybe some members of council didn't know, and was like a quick phone call. Or same thing with council, something's going on, maybe a quick phone call for us just to help. It's a two-way street, right? As most relationships are. But the big thing is communication. There's been a lack of communication, I think, within the county, even within departments and departments with the council. When we work together, we got to communicate. We're not on our own little island by ourselves as departments. We're all together as a county. And if we don't have those communication channels open, then we're going to see.
I'd like to make a brief comment about the previous question and thank my friends up here for the good ideas that they have about what to do differently in that office. If you go to my website, votebenson.net, you'll see some of those ideas as well, not all of them. In fact, I might steal a couple of those from you. So thank you for that. But what to do with the county council? I am not currently employed by the government. I work for myself. So I don't bring to this position any baggage from things in the past. I've got a clean slate. We can start fresh with the county council. Now, I do know the county council members. I'm friends with a few of them, just loosely. I invited them, for example, we had an event with the Cache County Republican Veterans Caucus, and as part of that, I'm the chair of that organization. We just started it this year, and we'll talk about that later if any of you are interested, because we could use some members too. But we, as part of that, I invited all of the county council members to come and look at, participate in a ceremony to honor one of our local veterans. And I was very pleased to see that many of them participated, took me up on that. I thought that was great. Thank you for that. But in my role as clerk, my job is to make sure that the council and the county is running smoothly. And while I'll be friendly and open and welcoming to everyone, as I hope you've seen tonight, my job is not necessarily to be their friend. My job is to be a watchdog, to make sure that we're doing things well. And if there's something that needs to be corrected, I need to be independent enough to stand up and say, now, wait a minute, I appreciate that you're trying to do the right thing here. Maybe there's something we could do a little bit better. Or I'm concerned about this over here, that maybe that we're not doing this exactly the right way. So by taking a friendly approach, I think that the council will not only understand that I'm trying to be a part of the solution, but also that I'm able to do that in a friendly way.
Good. All right. I have some questions about elections. I wonder if you could address what your thoughts are about the process, maybe help educate me on what you can and can't change, what you might bring to that.
First off, come one, come all. If you want to come look at the process, our door's open. Just give us a call and we'll meet you. I don't know how many times people have called and said, I would like to come visit the processing center. And I'm like, okay, pick the date and time and I'll meet you there with someone else with me. I want to have more open houses during the election. So I want to have one at least every Friday when the processing is going, just so everyone knows that it is open. The process is pretty, I don't want to say standard assembly line, but it is. we have a secure process. We make sure we have a chain of custody on every single ballot. So if someone calls and asks, like, give us the ballot number of da-da-da, like, where is it? And we can say, well, it's right here in this process, hasn't come in yet, or it's finished. You know where it is. With the state regulations, we are bound by law to do vote by mail, but we're not bound by law to increase voting in person. So we can, if you don't feel comfortable by voting by mail, you can vote in person. We have a vote by mail opt-out you can use. So if you don't want a mail-in ballot, you can call our office and make sure we don't mail you one, and you can vote in person. The things that we can change the company of who we process our ballots with. So if we have a contract set, so we have to wait till the contract is done, or we terminate the contract by a different vendor to mail out ballots. We can change our vendor when it comes to machines. And what else we can change? We can change our vendor when it comes to voter signature verification. On that end, we have 4. But on the actual administration of elections, or what kind of elections we can do, by state, we have to do vote by mail. But like I said earlier, we can still vote in person, and I want to expand that. Or, vote by mail brings a lot of emotions out to a lot of people. And if we have those more vote in person places, it will, I hope, will help ease the process.
As the chief election officer, I'm obligated to follow the law, and I'm happy to do that. Within the law, I have a lot of discretion. A lot, I don't know if it's a lot, I have some discretion. A little bit of what Bryson just mentioned. And when I have that discretion, I will do my utmost to make sure that we are having secure elections, especially with our inputs and outputs. I prefer voting in person. I prefer it for a lot of reasons. In fact, I prefer voting in person with photo ID on paper, one day only, election day, not election month, and in our precincts. I love being able to vote with all my neighbors. They can see me, I can see them. The wait times are very short. We get in, we get out, and we're done. Now, obviously, our legislator has passed a law that we need to vote primarily by mail. But we do have other options. And I'm glad that Bryson mentioned that we have the option to opt out of receiving mail-in ballot. Did any of you know about that? I see some people saying yes. I think that's one thing we could do a little bit better. For those people who are concerned about where their ballots are being mailed, or receiving 2 or 3 ballots, or not receiving a ballot at all, which, mistakes happen. Maybe we can advertise a little bit better that there's an option to opt out. And that could be some way that we could improve our elections. I like the idea of limiting inputs. So I like the idea of having fewer ballot boxes, because every ballot box is a source of potential risk. But I do like the idea of increasing voting locations, north and south. So if we could have 5 or 7 different locations to make it easier for people to vote on that election day, I think that's a tremendous benefit. I think the biggest thing is this. For the last 4-8 years, our country has gone through a lot of struggles with people wondering if our elections are secure. And we've seen it outside of Utah, where some of those problems have been rather severe. And we've seen a little indication within Utah that we might have some of those problems as well. In Cache County, I don't think we've seen some of those problems yet, but the potential is there. And I appreciate all of you who have expressed a concern about that, because it means that you're being vigilant and that you are concerned, you care about the security of our elections. As the Chief Election Officer, I will listen to your concerns. And I will try to understand your perspective. And from there, improve our elections as best we can. Thanks.
Yeah, I felt like David did a few minutes ago. A lot like to say has already been said, but I will add some things. I agree. I think we do need to increase the number of in-person voting locations in the county. I've received a lot of feedback from people since I announced I was running about their concerns over mail-in ballots. And I will say this. Personally, I have a lot of faith in our system here in Cache County. I do. I think that the results have been trustworthy. The process has been trustworthy and efficient. But that is not the same as me saying any concern is unwarranted. In fact, there is no concern that I am going to dismiss outright. And I think really what this comes down to is it first comes down to communication. The chief election officer needs to have an open door policy when it comes to these concerns. But not just the concerns from the people into his office, as important as that is, but there also needs to be plenty of communication from the clerk's office to the people. And so like what's been mentioned about the option to opt out of mail-in ballots, that option needs to be clear. It needs to be communicated to everyone in the county. Something I would like to do is to sit down, if I was elected, is to sit down with the council, because this communication often costs money. And that's one of the challenges here, is that when we have this mail-in ballot system, that not just the voting itself, but the communication regarding the voting happens over the mail. And that can be expensive. So I wanted to determine what is the best way to communicate with the people in the county that they can opt out if they would like. And that if they want to opt out, here's where they would go. If you live in Logan, we've got a location for you to come in Logan. If you live in Smithfield, my goal, just as my two opponents are, my two opponents is to have one in the north and south as well. And so that needs to be communicated to everyone so that they know that their ballots are being counted correctly and that there aren't any duplicates. But I also hope that when that communication is clear and obvious, that they can have faith not just in their own ballots, but in their neighbors as well. Because that's the other thing here is that, yeah, you may know that your ballot is being counted correctly, but you're one of tens of thousands of voters here in the county. And that's a lot more votes than your one ballot. So you need to have faith that their votes are being counted correctly too. And so I hope that communication, I want to open up that line of communication between the clerk's office and the public and make those options clear.
I have a question. First of all, I do support primarily voting in person. However, for 10 years I worked in Africa, training African military. Voting by mail would not work. For me to mail something from Africa to here would take 3 months for it to arrive. So sometimes I had a difficulty working with the county clerk to figure out a way that I could vote. There are many military who count their home as being here in Cache Valley. How do we deal with those?
Okay. You want to take 60 seconds and answer that question?
Sure. This is demonstrating how we can be brief and
Yes.
concise in our answers. That's a good skill to have. Thank you for your question. We do have a process already in place where the military are able to participate in their voting at home.
But I was not military.
But you were non-military.
I was a retired military, retired lieutenant colonel, but I was working under contract.
Thank you for that. We also have a way, even if right now we're primarily voting by mail, even if we weren't, there would still be options for you to vote from a foreign country, as long as we could have you verified. Now, obviously, in your specific situation, there was a challenge, wasn't there? With a 3-month delay. So how would you know how to vote? What would you know? How would you know what to do? That would be a challenge. And I'm not sure if I have a clear answer on how to handle that specific situation. But I do know that we can provide ballots to people who are out of state during the election so that they can mail them in. How to deal with the specifics of that situation in Africa could be quite challenging. But I appreciate that you still, even given that situation, serving in a foreign land, you still felt the requirement to vote. Still felt that duty. I think that's what I appreciate. One of the things I appreciate about this valley is that we want to do the right thing. So thank you for that. I feel like my answer isn't completely giving you what you want. So hopefully one of my friends up here will give us some more insight.
Yeah, I think it kind of comes down to, I appreciate the question. It comes down to that communication. I need to, that sounds like a particular challenge when I mean, it's not just another country, it's I assume a fairly remote area that it's no easy task. It's not like sending a postcard down the street at all. And so I think what's important is that, that again, my office has communicated effectively, whether it's just through our website, give us a call, and we have the solution. One of the things I think the previous clerk auditor did very well was cross-train every member of the office in everything. So whoever you called had an answer at the ready. I intend to continue that. And so you call my office. It doesn't matter who you're talking to. We're gonna have an answer for you. We're gonna have that ballot sent. I imagine it probably will come over the mail, and it's gonna come as early as we possibly can get it. And
It didn't come in the mail.
it did.
Came on the internet.
Really? Okay. And that would be and I appreciate that. That's that solution is something that my office would be prepared for. And so yeah, thank you.
There's this law called, it's the acronym UACAVA, but it's Uniform and Overseas Voting. So we are required by law, if you do request a mail ballot, if you're overseas or in uniform, or military, that we send that ballot 3 weeks before the actual drop of when we send the ballots out to here, and to citizens that live here. We also do by email, like you mentioned, you got it from the internet. And recently, this was on a call on how we can improve that with the Lieutenant Governor's office. And you're required, we are required if you request that ballot, and if you, through a uniform and overseas voting act application, that we send that email 3 weeks before, or the ballot itself 3 weeks before. Currently, I want to say we have, let me think, 57 currently UACAVA voters are in the county. We also do that with missionaries. If missionaries would like to vote, we can do that as well.
So I'm hearing two communication paths. One is a passive path, where the auditor's office makes information available to we the people. I'd like to know how that can be made available in such a way that we really want to look at that it's good information for us and that we can use that information. But the other communication path is more troubling, and that's the active path between the auditor and the county council. I would think that would be very difficult because you've got people that are using the information or ignoring the information, and they've got personalities that maybe will resist the information. What can you do? We already talked about how you can improve your relationship with the county council, but I'd just like to know a little bit more. When do they ask you? Do you volunteer stuff for that information for them? Is there any compulsion that they respond to you? Is it a difficult path? What can you tell us?
Yeah, so kind of heard two questions there. I'll start with the second one, if that's
Yeah,
okay.
that's the only important one.
Okay, okay. I'll just worry about that then. Well, there's a couple of different ways that we communicate our findings, whether it be through a full-fledged audit or just an examination. A few different ways we would communicate that. That includes the audit committee, which is a council committee. You think about, you go to Congress, you go to the legislature, they have committees. Well, our council has committees too. And one of them is the audit committee. We had an audit committee meeting today. Bryson was there with me as well. And, that is a council committee that is comprised of 3 members of the council, the executive, and then 1 citizen representative. And one of the roles of that committee is that is where the findings of all audits are reported to. And that's what we did today. We had an audit on all of the county vehicle fleet. You can go to the auditor website and see that full audit. But it was our internal auditor reported on the findings of that audit, where she audited all of the county's vehicles and if our fleet of vehicles is being run efficiently. So that's the most obvious way, and then certainly for our full-fledged audits, that would be where most of them would end up. Another place would be a county council meeting. This would be a particularly important audit, one that maybe has a critical finding. That might happen in a council meeting. It might happen in a council meeting behind closed doors even, and that does happen. And I will say, you're right, there are different personalities on the county council. It's one way of putting it. One of the council members back there staring at me, but there's different personalities on the county council and throughout the county, and it can be difficult. And fundamentally, the role of the auditor is not to be a friend. The role of an auditor is to be a watchdog. David mentioned that earlier, and that's exactly right. And the auditor has to be, that's why a sense of independence is critical. That the auditor is not there to collaborate, certainly work together on things, but not there to commiserate or to conspire with. They're independent. They're an independent office, and they're going to make findings that are going to make others unhappy. And if that's not happening, that might actually be an indication that the auditor is not doing their job very well.
So there's 3 types of audits. There is a forensic audit. Those ones aren't the big ones that you see on TV. There's like performance audits, and then I just call them like regular audits, the ones that we do just by department, or for example, the vehicle fleet. And I want to add on to that audit committee meeting. That's a public meeting. So any of you guys in this room can go and sit down in that public meeting. We have a recording of it that's posted online that you can listen to yourself. So you can hear our auditor herself describe her findings. And like Micah said, the auditor should not be the council's best friend. The auditor needs to be independent, and that's what our office has decided, and that's why we actually contracted out an internal auditor. We don't want an auditor, next door neighbors to a council member. We don't want an auditor, going out to dinner with another department head that they're auditing. Most important thing is, it's okay to be friendly, have an open communication with the council, but also I think the council needs to realize that the auditor's there to make things better for the county, and not think the auditor's there to get them in trouble either. And you hear the word audit, and a lot of it's sometimes weaponized. And audits are not here to weaponize against your political enemies, but to make sure the county or the government, whatever entity, is run efficiently. For example, today, with our audit finding with the fleet analysis, we found out we were insuring vehicles that we didn't even own. And we didn't know that. So now we can cut off all that insurance money to those vehicles that we don't even own. And that's the main purpose of the auditor, and this the communication with the council.
The auditor is an elected position, so ultimately reports to the people. The county council makes the laws for us here in the county. And so the auditor would need to follow those laws. And I'd like to actually commend the council just last week for updating a law that put a little bit more teeth into the auditing process, specifically with monthly reviews. I was planning to do monthly reviews anyway. Now with this new ordinance, or updated ordinance, gives it a little bit more oomph, a little bit more emphasis, which is great. As the auditor, I will do what code requires. And part of that is doing the will of the council. Through the committee that was just mentioned, we have 3 members of the council and the executive and a citizen who are in charge of asking me as the clerk, as the auditor, to perform these performance audits. Performance audits are different from financial audits. They have more to do with how the organization is working and how we're following code. Beyond that, again, using my discretion, I'm happy to suggest, to make a recommendation to the committee that maybe we need to do more regular performance audits. And maybe we need to put that on the calendar and schedule it, perhaps on a more regular basis, monthly, quarterly, whatever makes sense. But I feel like because I'm not involved in the county right now, because I don't have, I haven't been in politics or in county government for a long time, I feel like I truly can be independent. I can step up and say, well, we don't have any existing relationship in the past where I owe you anything, or I'm beholden to you. This is an equal voice. This is an equal office. So I think that one way that I can improve that communication with audits is that sometimes responding in a more timely fashion can be useful. So when things are requested of the council, if I can provide those in a more timely manner, then that would be helpful. And then when citizens like yourselves make suggestions on what might be useful on our website, to respond to that in a timely manner as well.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I kind of keep hearing stuff about efficiency, and I heard some about frontline workers. I have a lot of interest in that. I deal a lot with that field, and so when we talk about efficiency, you guys most of the questions tonight have been skewed towards technical ability. And so in my field, technical ability is probably 49% importance, where 51% is actually behavioral. So behavioral indicators are way more important than KPI, because the behavior is what drives your culture, it's what drives innovation, it's what drives ideas, and ideas are what drives growth. So 80% of ideas for innovation come from a front worker rather than top down. Top down is usually considered dumb ideas, bottom up is smart. So how will you guys drive behavioral indicators? What kind of behavior do you want to drive, and what behavioral indicators will you use to track that behavior?
Perfect. I think the best way is to have a good working relationship with your staff. The great thing about the previous clerk is, and myself, like if you have an idea, tell me. Like I'm not the one who's like immediately going to shut something down, because even just a temporary election worker might have a great idea to help with the election process, or even like a deputy clerk might have a good idea to help with the auditing process. It's all working collaborative. I think a lot of people realize there's a lot of bosses out there that just shut you down, and that's not the kind of person I'm going to be. I just moved into the big office, I guess, and I get so lonely because I'm so used to talking to everybody, and then we're just like beating off of each other. We have a big whiteboard in our office, like, okay, what do you want to do? How are we going to do it? And each person in the office has an opinion. And I would also say it goes to the citizens as well. The citizens say, hey, this would be a lot easier if you did this for me. I think a lot of other people would agree. Then we'll look into it and try it out, because we always got to test if something works. For example, just a little small tweak we did in our office. We hold wedding ceremonies. We had this wedding ceremony scheduler, and the scheduler only went to my calendar. so the entire office didn't know. And, you know, I'm all over the place, so sometimes I forget. So like a wedding like comes like wandering in, and like the entire office looks at me like, what is this? I'm like, oh, by the way, we have a wedding. But now I found out a form that the entire office now gets email notification that there's a wedding coming. Even if you're on vacation, you're gonna get the email saying, get ready. And they can also pay that fee online, because it's also kind of, we feel bad for couples because we get them married and you're like, okay, now give us $40. So before that, they can pay online, and so they get the entire situation ready. And you know, a lot of people like to elope, and you know, it's still their wedding day, and we don't want to make things more difficult for them. But like I said, overall, for me, if you have an idea that would make our office better, I want to hear it. Because maybe it's something that I haven't thought of, maybe it's something our office hasn't thought of. And because, you know, we've been in the office forever, sometimes we get used to how things are. But we always have to keep on looking to see if there's anything that.
There's a term in the business world called employee engagement. It's a concept of why people like to stay at the jobs where they are and why they leave. It's a concept that I taught on a regular basis and lectured to universities and business organizations, chambers of commerce, up and down I-15. One of the things that might surprise us is that the number one reason why people quit a job is not because of benefits, it's not because of money, it's because of their direct supervisor. And the number two reason that they quit a job is because of their supervisor. And the number three reason is that because the ideals, the vision, the mission of the organization that they're working for doesn't align with their personal values. And so I think your question is on point. It's not necessarily the technical skills, it's not necessarily the money or the benefits, it's the relationships that matter. And we see that in our own neighborhoods. It's relationships that matter, in our own families. So, I would become the student, the teacher becoming the student. That's it. Anyway, I put into practice those very principles that I've been teaching to organizations up and across Utah. Some of which are like KPIs that were mentioned, establishing vision statements. One that I'd like to do is to have a book club within the county, within the department, and learn with each other on a regular basis good principles that we can apply to increase our customer service to all of you. Another technique I'd like to use is green light. Green light. You may have heard that in your, it's where you have a session where everyone gets to come in and give you ideas about a certain topic. And nothing is off the table. It can be as crazy or off in left field as you want, but every idea is accepted. We don't do any red light thinking. Red light is judgment. We save that for down the road so that we can take some of these ideas. But when you open up the ideas to everybody, everyone's opinion is valid, everyone's perspective is open, then these frontline workers realize that you really do care about what they're thinking. And that's just one of many techniques that we can do. I think the biggest thing, I'll mention two more things. One is active listening. Sometimes we're so busy that we don't take the moment to pause and look someone in the eye and really hear what they're saying. And I think that's a cause of a lot of miscommunication and confusion in the world. And then the second thing that I'll mention is that I'd like to set some goals in our department. Not so sure I want to facilitate goals for other people's departments. That's their business. If they want help, that's great. But in our department, those goals are going to be set from the bottom up. We're going to help each other with that and set those goals. I guess the last thing I'll mention is that when I take over as clerk auditor, if that eventually happens, there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. In the technical aspects, okay, that'll be fine. I've learned technical job skills in the past. That actually won't be too bad. I think I can do that fairly well. But I'm going to have to sit at the feet of the people who are already doing the work. And I think by being a humble learner, that they're going to realize that I really do want to be a part of that team. And that by putting myself in that subservient position of sorts to learning from them, I hope that they'll realize that I value the work that they're doing.
That's a great question. I think that, like David, there's going to be a bit of a learning curve if I am chosen to be the clerk auditor. And one of the things, the first commitments that I put down on my website, micahsafeston.com, was that I'm committed to spending 10% of my week, 4 hours a week, not just in the office, but sitting behind the front desk and working the front desk as my employees would. And my intention with that was to be transparent to the public, be accountable to the public, so that anyone could come and talk with me, their elected official, about what my office can help them with. But there's another reason for that, is that I want to be there and to learn from the people who have been in that office longer than I have, because I'll be brand new and they're not. And so my intention is to learn from them, to see what they have to show me. Because that's really true of anyone you meet. And it's really been I don't know, I'm not even sure where I learned it. I think maybe it was when I was a missionary. Learning the idea that everyone has something to teach. And everyone has something that of value that they can share with you. And because of that, you probably need to shut up and listen. And I know I need to do a better job of that. That's going to be especially important for me if I am chosen, because I know that the people around me in that office will all have a lot to learn from them. And I think that as I learn from them, I hope that I can eventually come to provide my own insights, to say, hey, here's a new way of doing this thing. Here's a new idea that maybe hasn't been considered. And really, a lot of the best ideas they tend to come when you have the most voices. And so I hope that I can be a new voice in that office, someone that can not just bring the technical expertise, to bring to bring other departments together in improving efficiency, but also learning from each other just in that office. So thank you for that question.
Who's next? Please.
Thank you. I don't know exactly how to ask this, but I appreciate being able to sit at the feet of those who have experience. So I want to know just a little bit more. I did come in slightly late. What's the nature of the staff when you're talking about learning from them? What are we talking about, quantity-wise? And then this is the part I can't ask exactly. In what way, being able to follow the restraints of law, is this elected position really partisan? In what way is it going to be a Republican viewpoint perspective? How much wiggle room do you have there? And if that's the case, then in what ways would this role also represent a bipartisan population of the county? I don't know if I'm asking that the right way, if anybody interprets that well. So that's kind of what I'm asking. Well, I don't even know for sure. I've learned a lot tonight about what you said. So if anybody makes sense of my question, then I want to know about it.
Is that me?
Thank you.
Oh, okay. I'll see if I can struggle through that for you. What's your name?
Name, struggle with me. I'm Rachel.
Rachel, good to see you, Rachel. Well, with me as clerk auditor, it won't be a partisan position because I'm not a politician. I try to be a statesman. I'm a good governance kind of guy. So it doesn't matter to me if you're a Republican or a Democrat or from the Constitution Party or an independent party or any other party, the Green Party, whatever. Everyone gets treated the same. Now right now, this is a special election for Republicans, of course, and so in that sense, technically, I guess it is partisan. But as far as fulfilling the duties of the office, it's not going to exist. I'm not a part of a good old boy network, or I don't have, friends in high places. I do have a few friends. But, I don't, so I guess the answer in my situation would be no. Now, obviously, it's an elected position, so in general, I guess it could be a little partisan, but I hope that it's not. Because, especially the purpose of the clerk, the clerk's job is, and the auditor's job is kind of behind the scenes. It's not fancy, it's not something that should be in the newspaper every day. In fact, if I'm doing my job well, you probably wouldn't even know it, because it'll be under the radar. Just a lot of hard work, getting our hands dirty, rolling up our sleeves, and getting it done. And so I don't think there's any need for that. I think there is a place as the clerk and auditor to make suggestions and to make recommendations and try and influence things for the better. But we really do need to follow the law as it exists. So you might see me making some suggestions that are relevant to those positions. But there won't be, in an official capacity, I won't be commenting on national politics or anything like that. I don't think there's really any place for that. Did we do okay? Is that kind of what you're looking for?
I think so. I mean, so I came in here at the beginning of your introduction, and it was these principles that you stand on, but then you're saying ultimately when it comes down to the position, there's a lot of just following what code says.
It's the principles that matter the most. Yeah, it's the principles that matter the most. And so I guess what I see is a difference between principle-based leadership and partisan leadership.
Okay.
George Washington is famous in his farewell address for warning us against partisanship and against political parties. I think he was right. And I think in some ways we've kind of forgotten that advice. But yeah.
That's all. Thank you for your clarification.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm a Republican. I've been a Republican my whole life, and it's certainly the case that some of the decisions that I make as clerk auditor will be informed by my values as a Republican, the importance that I have, that I believe in of small government, localized government, individuals making choices about their future, families making choices about their future. And there are some things the auditor does, particularly the auditor, I think, that do relate to that. Because I believe those things, I want to make sure that our government is small. I want to make sure that as much of your tax dollars are staying with you, so that I can tell the council, hey, we don't need to raise taxes as much as you think we make. We can keep them low. So to that extent, me being a Republican, me being a conservative, does actually, I am going to take all that with me into the auditor's office. But it's also true that there's huge chunks of this job, primarily on the clerk side, where there isn't really a lot of wiggle room. Now, voting is, your ballot is sacred, but I'm not sure that's a partisan belief. I don't think it is. But there's, so there's all these other values, but I don't know if they're partisan. But it's definitely the case that the auditor needs to have political independence, but not devoid of values. The clerk is the clerk of the council. And the clerk needs to put his often, I should say, needs to put his wishes aside to serve the council and also to execute the laws that the council and the legislature have put forth. And so there is a lot of kind of setting your own personal values aside and saying, I have to do this job because I'm part of an institution and I have a role to play. And that role is more important than me. And it's even more important than the things I believe in. Now, the good thing is that the clerk's office doesn't ask me to do anything that violates what I believe in. I believe in the importance of election integrity. I believe in the importance of transparency, and I believe we have an excellent county council who, and I'm happy to serve them, happy to carry out the laws the legislature has passed. So it doesn't violate any of my values, but in the end, my role is what's most important.
I was just piggybacking off of you guys. To me, it is partisan but nonpartisan. Partisan as in my values are going to guide me on what I believe I should guide the office on the clerk side and on the auditor side. But at the same time, I don't think the clerk should be delving into politics. I've been, calling me and some of you and telling my campaign slogans, bring back boring. Because we need a clerk and an auditor who's completely independent of everything. We can't dive into someone else's eyes. We are in charge of auditing all these departments, and then if we're going on being, buddy-buddy with, say, development services, we can't do that. I do believe in individual liberty. I believe in small government. And when we're auditing those expense sheets, maybe someone should not be doing the $18 car washes and go down to $8 car washes. Because, that's our money that they're spending. We gotta make sure that every dollar is where it should be, and every dollar should be spent conservatively.
You also answered just what does the staff look like currently that would be considered like the clerk auditor?
They look great.
They're my second family. No.
Number-wise, tell me.
Yeah,
just a
so
little bit more.
currently we have, since I guess the current clerk auditor's gone,
Yeah.
we have 3 full-times, so the chief deputy, myself, and then 3 other full-times by then. We have 2 deputy clerks and we have an elections administrator. And then we have a couple part-time clerks that help us with the front desk, help me stay on my tasks. And, it's a great office. A lot of people say, we have too much fun, because, we're family. I believe that. We know about our personal lives. Just recently, one of our deputy clerks, his wife, I guess, just had a baby. And so, all of us were send us pictures, how's everything? Do you need anything? And, you can, even if not under work hours, we can text each other, or, just hang out.
So that helps inform the previous question, where we're talking about learning at the feet of the others, right?
Yeah.
I still wasn't sure who we were all.
And that's super important. I feel like any supervisor in any supervisor role knows you are the boss, but you also have a good working relationship with your team. Because you're only as good as your team.
Thank you.
Next. Yes, sir.
It's been brought up, but everyone's mentioned that the current office has had challenges, but it's only been touched on. What is the challenge that you most want to resolve? And also, we have one other question is, I'll go with that. Thank you. What is the challenge that you see the current office have that you really want to resolve?
I think that one of the biggest challenges in the county has been, and Bryson alluded to it, I think I might expound on it a little bit more, has been communication, but particularly communication in regards to the budget. And both the budget making process and then the oversight of the budget, both of those things have been very difficult for the county. Now, the auditor is not particularly involved in setting the budget. That's the executive, he's the budget officer, and then the council, they pass the budget. But the auditor is very involved in oversight over county funds, over the current year's budget. And one of the challenges has been that, and this has been a source of friction between the council and primarily the executive, has been a trust that the money is being spent the right way. And the council has not always communicated their frustrations with the executive, and vice versa. My hope in being the county auditor is that I can be a bridge there. When the council has a question about an expense or about a particular fund, there might be some apprehension in asking the executive directly, because the executive's the one actually spending the money. And that can often come across the wrong way. It can come across as a political attack. It comes across as trying to get after someone. My hope is that because the auditor isn't the one actually spending the money, there's a little bit, that question can be asked of the auditor instead, and then the question can be answered a little bit more dispassionately. And so the auditor can be asked, what's the status of this fund? What was this expense about? Provide that answer, and no one needs to be frustrated. No one needs to feel like they've been attacked, and it can happen in the right way, in the right form. So, to me, that's one of the biggest challenges that's facing the county, and particularly around the auditor's office. And that's I hope to be a bridge there, and to help kind of solve that.
Yeah, I would say communication again and again and again. It's always good to have a second eyes on things. And, every once in a while, the auditor gets put in that weird position of in the middle, right? And that was mainly all the challenges are coming from. Either, council says like, hey, you gotta check this out, and then the executive's like, hey, also do this. And there's, that contention because you're just the middle guy. Sometimes punch you back, depends on the day. And, I think it also comes, because you're the auditor, but then you're also the clerk. And then you have so much on your plate together, this in general, because it's hard to juggle. I think another challenge is too, is our county is growing. And so all of us are kind of bursting at our seams, even in the office space. So, maybe we should split the clerk auditor's office, have the auditor be separate. And, maybe that'll ease the tension a bit. Because, there's just so much work that needs to be done. And sometimes these little small things fall through the cracks. And, having maybe a separate office, having the auditor that's all you do is you're the elected auditor, and that's your job, maybe that's how you solve that problem.
Eventually, the two offices will split. Eventually, when we get big enough, when we have enough tax revenue, those two offices will become separate. Until that time, I'm actually looking forward to doing all that work together. I like to work. I like to keep busy. And I like having the ability to have impact in a lot of different areas. I agree that communication has been an issue. Now, I've observed this from the outside because I haven't been an integral part of the council or the clerk's office. I've been just a resident like any of you. I have seen some miscommunication, and that's unfortunate. And I think part of that miscommunication is because of some of the personalities involved, and that's also unfortunate. So I think bringing an element of humility and service to the position is going to be of value, because in the end, I'm serving not just the council, but all aspects of the executive as well. And I'm confident that I can do that in a way that allows both parties, or all parties, to see that I have no agenda of my own except to serve. As I mentioned before, it's kind of a chance for a fresh start, because I wasn't a part of the past, I just want to be a part of the future. A little bit in the present, but also the future. So, I hope that answered your question.
Ready?
Hold on.
This is a separate question, and it is only for you, David.
Uh-oh.
Where you have your other careers, will you be doing this full time? What's happening to all the other things you've been involved in? I believe these gentlemen, and you can confirm, this is your full-time job if elected.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this would be my full-time job. It's actually no longer an option to go part-time. The council passed back in December a new county code that required that this position be full-time. So I wouldn't even have an option. But yes, I'm putting my business coaching business on hold. Things have worked out very well for that. And this is the only thing I'd be doing while I was elected.
Yes, sir.
This is more of a procedural question. But, as auditor, do you have the freedom to audit any department you like, or is that sent down by council?
I can answer that one. I'll say that. It's a little bit of both. Mainly it's through the audit committee. So we get together, the clerk auditor is an advisory member, so not a voting member. So we can advise them saying, hey, we would like to do this audit to the committee. The committee we ask, what do you guys think? And the committee can either approve, say yes, or yes, but I also want this, this, and this. The members of the audit committee, we have 3 council members in there, are executive. And we have a citizen member as well. He's a certified accountant. And we kind of battle it out of where we want the scope of audits want to be, where we want, like what departments should be audited. So every single audit we've done, we've gone together with the audit committee and said, this is our idea, what do you think? And then they give us the green light to do that. Council also has the audit authority as well. So they can ask us to audit something, or they can get an auditor themselves. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, pretty much. Can a citizen request an audit?
A citizen can suggest, yeah, like you can easily come to the office and say, hey, I think you should audit this, and then you can bring it in front of the committee. The audit committee is a public meeting. It's a public body, so you can email members of the audit committee to bring it forward, and we'll discuss it. You can be there yourself to discuss it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important that whoever is in this office is willing to make the decisions on their own audits. So they do need to work with the audit committee, and the council is going to ask them to perform certain audits. But this is also an independent office, and the county auditor not just has the authority, but I would suggest actually has the responsibility to use their own judgment to determine where they need to look, what they need to investigate, and what I am committed to doing is to publishing an auditing plan to say these are the audits I'm going to be conducting this year, and to make that very clear, and then make those very public. But then absolutely, yeah, working with the council, and because the council, they don't have the resources to conduct an audit on their own unless they hire someone from the outside, which they can do. But the auditor's office is that resource, so they need to be there as well. So Bryce is right. Yes to both things.
A couple quick points. I look forward to doing a lot of audits. I think it'd be fun, especially the performance audits, because I think that's where we can make an impact where we haven't made in the past. And so I would ask and suggest with the council and the committee that we do that. Of course, the only department that I'm not allowed to audit is my own, so the council would need to do that or something else. Another point I would make is that I would actually prefer to do as many of those audits internally as possible. Obviously, we'll need to outsource that to some forensic auditors, or for some other audits we need to get an outside source, but as much as possible, I think the auditor should actually audit. And I look forward to that. I think it'd be exciting. I think the biggest impact in those performance audits would be to make recommendations on how to improve operations in the different departments. Of course, they'd just be recommendations, but I think that can have a good influence throughout the county.
Why don't we have some closing statements? Why don't we take 2 minutes each? Bryson, you want to take 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Closing statement, and then David, and then Mike.
Perfect. I just want to end and say experience matters. And not just experience in general, but the right experience matters. I have the experience of running this office. I've been doing it for almost 3 years. I know everything. I know that sounds very prideful and selfish of me, but I know everything. I know how to do a marriage license. I know how to do a business license. I know how to run a ballot. I know how to help you with voter registration. If you have a question about the office, I know. And the best part is, too, I've cross-trained everyone behind me, too, so they know the answers as We need someone in this office that knows what they're doing, and on day one, they can get the job done. We have a municipal election coming up. I don't know if you heard, but they switched the dates on us. It's September 5th and November 21st now because of the special election for Stewart's resignation. And then after that, we're jumping in right into 2024. A lot of people don't realize that, there's 3 elections in the presidential cycle. There's Super Tuesday. If we opt in, we have the state primary, and then we have a general in November. We need someone with the right experience who can actually conduct and administrate those elections. Even if when a wrinkle does come up, we can hurry and hire it. That person's me.
I'm 54 years old. I've got 6 children. I've been a part of the Valley for 20 years. Spent most of my adult life here. I really love Cache Valley. We've had a chance many times to move out and work elsewhere, and we've decided to stay here. So this is our home. I'd like to contribute to my home. I'd like to be a positive influence. So for a short time, I ask for your consideration to be the clerk and auditor. I think I've got the experience that matters. I agree with what was just said. We need someone who can step in day one. I'm ready to start Thursday morning, 29th of June. Today, I called the Lieutenant Governor's office. I routinely call offices throughout with my elected officials to find out what's going on, because I like to go right to the source. The meetings that we've been talking about, I participate in on a regular basis. Not the audit meetings themselves, not the audit committee meetings, but I have listened in on those to figure out what's going on. So I feel like I've got a good grasp of what's going on. I've actually spent a lot of time in both county and state code understanding my responsibilities as the clerk auditor. And I've spent some time in the council meetings as well. So experience is important. I have 30 years experience making things better. Haven't always been successful, please don't get me wrong. But I have had enough success to know that this is something that I could do and do well. And I hope that I would make each of you proud. I want to just mention one last thing. Early in my career, I was working for a small business, and the owner asked me to lie on his behalf to a customer. He said, "Tell the customer this feature is done in the software." And I said, "What? What do you mean it's not done?" "Yeah, but just tell them it's done. It's important. They're coming in from Japan. We really need to make a big impression." And I was still a young kid, just starting off my career in business, and I was not comfortable doing that. And so to the owner of the company, I said, "No, I won't do it." "Sorry." And he said, "No, this is part of your job. You have to do this." I said, "Well, I don't really have to do that, and I won't." And instead of being fired, he gave me a raise and an increase in title, a promotion. What I learned from that lesson is that integrity does matter. In some cases, even more than experience. Someone who's courageous enough to stand up and do the right thing at the right time, regardless of the consequences. I try to be that person every day. I hope I will be that person in the future. I promise that I will do my best as your clerk and auditor.
Yeah, thank you all for coming out tonight. I just wanted to close with a short experience. In 2008, I was living in Detroit, Michigan, and this was at the height of the financial crisis, and in the part of the country where it was worse than anywhere else. Almost every one of my friends' dads had been laid off. I was 15 years old, and I remember hearing on the radio in my dad's car about, I can't remember if it was the mayor or district attorney, who had embezzled tens of thousands of dollars in Detroit in 2008. And I remember just sitting and wondering, how on earth could someone do that? Dave's right. Integrity matters, especially in local government. Local government provides services we all use every day and we rely upon. It's important. And for that reason, I have loved working in local government. Whether it's bending over and changing out a water meter or writing an ordinance on the county auditor. I have loved working in local government. But it does not work without someone with integrity who respects your money, who respects your ballots. I hope you can put your faith in me, and I would be honored and humbled, because the idea of my neighbors putting, I take that extremely seriously. So I appreciate your support. Thank you again for coming out tonight.